Imagine your own mother, the woman who raised you, looking you in the eye and calling your child, her grandson, a burden, simply because she had brunch plans. That moment? It shattered everything, and it set off a chain reaction that changed my life forever. For years, 28F, felt like I was stuck in a twisted dance with my mom. Our relationship, if you could even call it that, had been rocky since I was a child. But this time she didn't just cross a line. She obliterated it. And my beautiful son, Jaden, became an innocent casualty in her chaotic drama. Let me take you back. My mom, Sylvia, 56F, raised my younger sister, Jane, 26F, and me after my dad died unexpectedly. She's been a bitter woman for as long as I can remember, though people always excused it because of her trauma. Losing a husband, raising two girls alone, it was a lot. But I, the naturally spirited child, always running outside, always smiling, never received that same kindness from her. Jane was just 2 when Dad passed, so I tried to help Mom in my own small ways, watching Jane, entertaining her. Mom would acknowledge me here and there, but that was the extent of the love I got. Over time, that lack of warmth chipped away at me. I started lashing out, becoming the ungrateful child she seemed to expect. By 13, I was working a part-time job, doing chores, even babysitting Jane. But no matter what I did, Mom would come home and find fault with the tiniest things. It led to daily fights, and eventually, I just became aloof. Jane, I think, was affected by my sudden emotional withdrawal. She tried to connect, but I pushed her away. It wasn't long before Jane became Mom's golden child. The favoritism was so blatant that Mom actually missed my high school graduation because Jane was sick. Honestly, that's a whole other story for another day. As soon as I could, I left for college in another city. There was zero contact with Mom. Neither of us made an effort. Jane and I would exchange casual texts, but that was it. A few years into college, I married, and then Jaden arrived.
My sweet boy.
He was allergic to 10 specific food items, many of them life-threatening. The doctors recommended a vegan lifestyle for us, and we embraced it. Life was okay. My marriage, however, was not. It turned abusive, so I filed for divorce and moved back to my hometown with Jaden. Jane, hearing the news, wanted to meet Jaden and me. I invited her over. She showed up with Mom. And Mom? She acted like nothing had ever been wrong between us. It was bizarre, honestly. I wanted to confront her right then, but seeing Jaden light up with new company, I let it go. For the moment. Later, after Jaden was asleep, I finally confronted Mom about the years of silence. Jane immediately jumped in, apologizing on Mom's behalf. She called it an olive branch, saying they were the only family I had left. I wasn't convinced, but Mom pleaded. She begged to be part of Jaden's life, and seeing how happy he was, how much he already adored her, I decided to give it a shot. For a few months, things were all right. I found a hybrid marketing job, and my company was amazing, letting me work from home for Jaden. Jane was in college an hour away, so she visited occasionally. But with Mom, things were still tense. She'd come over almost every weekend, supposedly to help or watch Jaden. Instead, she'd take charge of my house like I was a teenager living under her roof. I let it slide a few times, trying to believe this was just how she was. But her controlling nature quickly became unbearable. I knew I'd fight with her if I confronted her directly, and I didn't want Jaden to witness that. So, I asked Jane to intervene. Jane agreed. I felt a small flicker of relief. What happened next was hell. The very next day, Mom called me, furious. She went on and on about how I should have talked to her like an adult, instead of complaining to Jane. I tried to tell her it wasn't a good time, but she just kept going. So I put her on speaker and went back to work. She must have realized I wasn't responding, because she eventually hung up. That evening, Jane called. Mom was disappointed, crying about how I'd handled the call. I told Jane, very clearly, that I wouldn't be pushed around anymore, not like when I was a child. I told her I needed Mom out of my life, and Jaden's for a while. Jane tried to talk me out of limiting Mom's time with Jaden, but eventually, she understood. A text from Mom arrived later, apologizing for misbehaving and promising to keep her distance. A year passed. Jane graduated college. Jaden turned 4, which meant I could finally leave him with trusted babysitters during emergencies. Jane often filled that role. I saw Mom occasionally at family events, and surprisingly, things went pretty well. Then one day, I had to rush to work urgently. I asked Jane to babysit Jaden, but she had a job interview. She suggested Mom. I was hesitant, of course, remembering everything, but I was desperate. It felt like the only option. Mom was thrilled. I gave her a quick briefing on Jaden's allergies and the emergency plan. I had to cut myself short because Mom blurted out, "You can trust me. I raised you, didn't I?" I still handed her Jaden's cheat sheet, begging her to call me immediately if anything went wrong. She nodded, and I left. My work was only 2 or 3 hours. Simple enough for someone who just bragged about her parenting skills, right? An hour and a half later, my phone rang. "Get to the hospital ASAP." My heart stopped. I rushed there, my mind racing. Jaden had an allergic reaction. He'd eaten cookies containing gluten, one of the 10 life-threatening allergens. The doctors said he was safe now, but it could have gone horribly wrong. My blood ran cold. I was furious with Mom. I told her to wait outside while I was with Jaden. When I came out, Jane was already there. I sent her to Jaden's room, needing a moment alone with Mom. What followed was a screaming match. Mom tried to blame Jaden for eating the cookie when she wasn't looking, but she quickly broke down, admitting she hadn't listened to me, hadn't even checked the cheat sheet. I was done. "You cannot be around Jaden without my supervision anymore," I told her, my voice shaking with rage. She cried, called it a mistake, said I was being too harsh. But I stood my ground. This was life or death for my child. She left. Jane followed. Jane texted later, accusing me of being too harsh. I shot back. She'd face the same consequences if she defended Mom. Jane backed down fast. I immediately hired a professional, background-checked caretaker, Nancy. I no longer needed Jane for Jaden. Our relationship became even more distant, just occasional texts. And I was okay with that. Months later, I was on another work trip. It was Jaden's monthly doctor's appointment. Nancy was at the hospital with her own child. I called Jane, hoping she could take him. Jane answered, but claimed she had a work commitment. Then she suggested Mom. I was about to refuse, to remind her what happened last time, but before I could, Mom's voice boomed from the background. She didn't know I was on the call. "I wouldn't babysit Jaden even if I was being paid," she ranted. "Dealing with him and his condition is a burden." She went on, blaming me for not being a good mother, for keeping the burden to myself. My blood ran cold. That word, burden again. I hung up on Jane and immediately called Mom. I was going to give her a piece of my mind. She picked up, immediately apologizing, saying she was just frustrated because she had brunch plans with Jane. Brunch plans, that was it for me. "I wish you'd stay away from me and this burden forever," I told her, my voice shaking with a cold fury I didn't know I possessed. I hung up before she could say another word. Jane tried to text me, apologizing, but I ignored her. She had lied about work. I decided to take a rain check at my job and take Jaden to his appointment myself. From that day on, I decided no more contact with either of them. A year passed. Jaden constantly asked about Grandma. It tore me apart to see him miss her, but I managed to distract him. It was his 5th birthday, and we'd already chosen his kindergarten. I sent out a few invites, including one for Jane, but not for Mom. Jane happily attended, arriving with a massive bag of gifts. They looked expensive. I felt uncomfortable. "Please don't spend so much," I told her, "especially for a child who'll probably move on to the next toy in 5 minutes." Jane then revealed the small, wrapped box inside was hers, but the rest were from Mom. I didn't know how to react. I asked her to take them back. She refused, saying she didn't want to get involved in my feud with Mom. She urged me to at least consider Mom's gesture for Jaden. She was right. Mom couldn't see him. I started to feel a twinge of guilt. Maybe I was being too harsh? Maybe Jane was right, And it wasn't that serious? After the party, I decided to call Mom and talk things out. Everyone left. Jaden and I started opening gifts. Of course, he dove for the huge bag from Grandma. I pulled out a plushie for his school bag. As I reached in for more, my hand brushed against multiple boxes. I pulled them out. Expensive bakery cookies, made from ingredients Jaden was severely allergic to. My heart sank. She was so focused on this grand gesture, this massive display of affection, she hadn't even checked if it was safe. I hid them, telling Jaden the plushie was the only gift from Grandma. But he saw them. He threw a tantrum, grabbed a box, begging me to open it. Frantic, I called Mom. She answered, ready for a fight, expecting an apology and effusive thanks for her excellent gift. When I told her the gift was dangerous and asked her to tell Jaden it wasn't for him, she flipped. She went on a tirade, giving me examples of how she'd raised Jane and me, saying that if I wasn't such a weird hippie with my alternative vegan lifestyle, Jaden wouldn't have these issues. I was utterly dumbfounded by her audacity. But I didn't have time to argue. I just needed her to address Jaden. After some more complaining, she finally did. She told Jaden the cookies weren't for him, and she'd bring his real gift tomorrow. Jaden, to my surprise, listened. I mumbled a thanks for calming him down and hung up before she could launch into another attack. I fell into a deep rut. Her words, blaming me for Jaden's health when she was so clearly in the wrong, triggered so much childhood trauma. I called Jane, hoping for some understanding. Instead, she simply said, "Just let it go. That's just how Mom is." In that moment, I knew I would never discuss my problems with Jane again, and I would definitely teach Mom a lesson. The next day, Mom showed up at my door with another gift for Jaden. "Leave," I told her, my voice firm. "You're not happy with me or my lifestyle, so much so that you're willing to put your grandson's life in danger. You don't deserve to be in our lives." She immediately started talking about raising me through hardships, accusing me of stealing her grandson. I held my ground. "I don't want you around anymore." She tried to guilt-trip me, bringing up the expensive gifts. I went inside, grabbed the entire bag of presents, and returned them. I even wrote her a check for the one Jaden had already opened. "No need to be petty," she snapped. But I was determined. No strings attached. She left, disappointed, defeated. Breaking the news to Jaden was hard. I told him Grandma was away for a while, busy with her own plans. He accepted it, thankfully. Jane called, hysterical. Mom had thrown a tantrum after leaving my house and was sick. Jane wanted me to apologize, to mend things. "That's how Mom is," I told her. "She'll be fine." Jane called me unempathetic and hung up. I was okay with it. My relationship with Jane might be damaged, and Jaden might never see his grandma again. But for once, I felt sure I wasn't wrong. Update 1. The comments confirmed what I felt in my gut. I wasn't in the wrong. I still felt a pang of regret about Jane, but she was enabling Mom, justifying her terrible actions. I understood Jane wasn't to blame for being the golden child, but her non-confrontational nature had allowed Mom to run rampant. It was time for her to see that relationships can't be maintained by being a doormat. I planned a short vacation with Jaden, figuring it would be good to get away until things settled down. Before we left, I got a call from my paternal aunt. I hadn't mentioned my dad's family before. They usually advocate for Mom's behavior or turn a blind eye. This call was unexpected. My aunt immediately launched into an earful about Mom being hospitalized, about me abandoning her. Mom had been bad-mouthing me to everyone. I simply told her it was complicated and to stay out of it. She started calling me names. I hung up. I expected more calls, but blocking her sent a message. Jaden and I left for our vacation, hoping for some peace. Update 2. Our vacation was incredible. I stayed completely offline, which helped immensely. When I finally checked my phone, I had a slew of missed calls from relatives and some hateful emails. Mom was still playing the victim, twisting the narrative. There was no talking sense into her. My only option, I realized, was Jane. I called her back, leaving a voicemail asking her to keep an eye on Mom's rumors. I warned her there'd be consequences if the harassment continued. Jane called that same night. She tried to act like nothing had happened between us, but I wasn't having it. I cut straight to the point. She finally confessed that Mom was practically begging to talk to me. I initially refused, but after a lot of persuasion from Jane, I agreed to a call. Mom was overjoyed, speaking as if everything was normal. I cut her off. "Why do you want to talk to me, Mom?" She told me that she had been suffering in silence ever since I'd asked her to stay away from Jaden. Funny, considering how much she'd badmouthed me. She said she'd accept any conditions if it meant being a part of Jaden's life. I hadn't realized how attached she'd become, though she vaguely hinted at it as a way to reconnect with me. As much as I wanted to sympathize, I couldn't forget the 2 times she'd almost endangered my son's life, then blamed me. So I said no. There wasn't anything more to say. I ended the call and went back to my life. The next few days were quiet. Fewer calls, no more attempts from Mom to apologize. Jane hadn't reached out, so I thought things were finally calming down. Then, last weekend, I got an invite to a childhood friend's wedding. I don't usually go to these things, but my friend insisted. I never considered Jane might be invited. It was a shock to see her at the reception, with her +1, my mother. Jaden was absolutely thrilled to see his grandma. Mom, surprisingly, controlled her excitement in my presence. My mommy radar was on high alert, and I kept Jaden close. I greeted Mom and Jane normally, but as I headed to my assigned table, Mom asked if we could talk. I told her I didn't want to cause a scene, that it was best not to. But Jaden, seeing his grandma, started to throw a tantrum. He desperately wanted to be with her, so he suggested we all sit together. There were no seating charts, so it was possible. To avoid escalating Jaden's meltdown and to ensure his safety, I agreed. The night went surprisingly well. Mom was civil, Jaden had a blast, and Jane and I actually caught up. Jane apologized for blaming everything on me, and we cleared the air. I didn't talk much with Mom. She was preoccupied with Jaden, and that was fine by me. As the night ended and we headed to the parking lot, Mom stopped me. "Did the evening go poorly?" she asked. "It was fine," I replied. She then asked if, based on those few hours, she could be part of our lives again. My stomach churned. "I allowed you to be around Jaden tonight because it was the only practical option," I told her, my voice low but firm. "But you've endangered his life before, twice, and you've never taken real responsibility for it. There's no way I'm letting you near him again, even if it makes me the villain in my son's eyes." She started to cry, right there in the parking lot. Jane tried to calm her, to guide her to their car. I knew I needed to leave. Fast. I rushed to my car with Jaden, who was now upset, seeing his grandma like that. Mom tried to coax Jaden into going with her, but he was scared. He clung to me. Her crying turned into wailing. People started to gather. I left. After putting Jaden to bed, I called Jane. She spoke in hushed tones, asking me to call later. I did. The next day was Sunday. After feeding Jaden and finishing chores, I sat him down. I explained that he wouldn't see his grandma anymore and that he should avoid interacting with anyone outside at school without my permission, especially Jane or Grandma. I think the previous night's incident helped him understand. Jane called soon after. She couldn't talk last night, she said, because Mom had become hysterical at the mere mention of my name. I told her it was fine. She said things were okay for now, but she feared Mom's behavior might indicate a bigger issue. I agreed. I share my concerns about Mom potentially bothering us again. Jane understood. She even suggested a restraining order if Mom didn't improve. I'd also considered moving, just in case. Update 3. I'm writing this final update after about a month because, incredibly, this issue has finally been resolved. Jane, wisely, followed through on her concern about Mom's behavior. She got Mom to a specialist. The diagnosis: severe bipolar disorder. The psychiatrist recommended admitting her to a private mental health institution for a while, given her age and for better care. Jane agreed. She discussed it with Mom, and Mom, to everyone's surprise, understood and accepted the doctor's advice. The institution is in another state. Mom and Jane will be leaving next week. I knew Jane didn't have the money for something like this, so I offered to help financially. But she said Mom was covering the cost, so I backed off. Jane also passed on a message from Mom to Jaden. She'd get well soon and see him when his mother allowed it. It's not a perfect ending, not by a long shot. But for the first time in my life, there's a glimmer of peace. A reason. And for Jaden, safety. Have you ever faced a situation where family crossed such an undeniable line? What would you have done to protect your child, your peace? Tell me what you think in the comments. I really want to know.